Hello, my fellow project managers. Welcome to PMP Exam Radio Show. I hope you're doing well, and I hope you've had a great week. My week has been really eventful. I've had 2 students take the PMP exam, and they smashed the exam yesterday. They are now PMPs. One of the things that we did as we prepared for the exam was to go pretty hard into the world of Agile. And of course, out of those firms who say they use Agile, about 71% of those firms use Scrum. Scrum is used in so many companies, and it was one of the things we focused on. Questions came up about the product owner this week from some of my graduates who are now PMPs, and they asked the question, what exactly does the product owner do? In addition to everything else that we've heard, it's a very small piece of work. Just guarding the product backlog, is that all they do? So today I decided I would take some time out and talk to you about the product owner. Now, to get a quick picture about the product owner from the world of Scrum, understand that we have a title for the product owner, informal title. We call it the Chief Value Officer. So the product owner is a role on the product development team that is responsible for managing the product backlog in order to achieve the desired outcome that the development team seeks to accomplish. In other words, the product owner is responsible for prioritizing the product backlog by value and for deciding what gets done and when, of course, working with the team. Key activities to accomplish this task of being the product owner are clearly identify and describe product backlog items in order to build a shared understanding of the problem and solution with the product development team. Now, in many teams I've seen, to be perfectly honest, the product owner may not be a technical person. The product owner instead is someone who really understands the business and is the mouthpiece or intermediary for the business between the dev team and the business. Another job of the product owner is to make decisions regarding the priority of product backlog items in order to deliver maximum value with minimum output. In other words, maximize the outcome with minimum output. Maximize the amount of work not done to deliver maximum value. It is also the job of the product owner to determine whether a product backlog item was satisfactorily delivered. This is not to negate the input of stakeholders during the sprint review, but it's really to accentuate the overall accountability factor for the product owner. Hold on to that thought because accountability is huge in this role. The product owner should ensure transparency into the upcoming work of the product development team. And a shout out to the Agile Alliance for all of these great tips. The product owner role was created as part of the Scrum framework in order to address challenges that product development teams had with multiple conflicting direction or no direction at all with respect to what to build. Many infer that a product owner is someone who can spend a considerable amount of time with the product development team providing clarification on product backlog items and making decisions about which product backlog items to do and regarding the specifics of those particular product backlog items. They are a mouthpiece for the business and they work with the team to decide on what goes into the backlog for the next sprint. It is not something that is done in isolation. The role of the individual responsible for deciding what the product development team should build varies on the framework the team is using and their disposition towards Scrum terminology. Some people stay clear of Scrum terminology and they use other names that perform basically the same function, such as on-site customer or product champion or product director or value manager. The set of activities that a product owner does is often referred to as product ownership. Let's get into some details about what the product owner does from the lens of the Scrum Guide. The product owner is accountable for maximizing value of the product resulting from the work of the Scrum team. How this is done, of course, varies widely from team to team. As I said, the terms vary widely. But when we talk about product ownership, this should include developing and explicitly communicating the product goal, creating and clearly communicating product backlog items, ordering product backlog items, bearing in mind not just value, but also risk factors, and also ensuring that the product backlog is transparent, visible, and understood. The product owner could do all of these things, or they could delegate them. They could ask others to be responsible for them. This, again, does not mean that the product owner is not accountable. Remember the difference between responsible and accountable? Responsible is the doer. Accountable means passing the buck stops with that person. In other words, ultimate accountability, ultimate ownership. So the product backlog is ultimately owned by the product owner. Some of you have taken these PMP prep questions where they ask you, someone's got a new story to add to the product backlog. What should be done with it? A, tell the Scrum Master. B, tell the product owner. C, discuss with the team. Or D, put it in the backlog. And the answer is put it in the product backlog. Why? Because anyone can add to the product backlog. You might recall that the product backlog is an emergent list. It's an emergent ordered list of what is needed to improve the product. Anyone can add to the product backlog. Now, of course, the developers who are doing the work, they are responsible for sizing. They're responsible for understanding what needs to be done to the level that they can actually get into the sprint. But when it comes to what gets put into the backlog, anyone can put any story of their fancy into the backlog. The question is, will it be done? So when we talk about the product owner, the entire organization must respect their decisions. These decisions are visible in the content and ordering of the product backlog and through the inspectable increment at the sprint review. The product owner is one person, not an entire committee. The product owner may represent the needs of many stakeholders in the product backlog. Those wanting to change the product backlog can do so by trying to convince the product owner. So one more look at the product backlog itself. The product backlog is an emergent ordered list, which means it's not etched in stone, it's not fixed, it changes over time. The product backlog items that can be done by the Scrum team within one sprint are deemed ready for selection in a sprint planning event. They usually acquire this degree of transparency after refining activities. So just remember that product backlog refinement does happen in the middle of the sprint for the next sprint. It is the act of breaking down and further defining product backlog items into smaller, more precise items. This is an ongoing activity to add details such as a description, order, and size. Remember, we talk about the definition of ready. Definition of ready means that user story, that PBI, product backlog item, is ready to go into the sprint. So there's a lot of stuff that happens outside of the next sprint. In other words, it happens the sprint before. So a lot of the priming of the backlog should be done by the product owner working with the team. A lot of stuff goes into the product backlog, a lot of work, but ultimately the product owner is responsible. Now, in closing, we're going to talk about how the Scrum Master serves the product owner. The product owner is served by the Scrum Master in different ways, such as helping to find techniques for effective product goal definition and product backlog management, helping the Scrum team understand the need for clear and concise product backlog items. Remember, definition of ready and also the definition of done. Helping establish empirical product planning for a complex environment and facilitating stakeholder collaboration as requested or needed. How do we know when a story is done? By the definition of done. What does done mean? Many things that have to be done before a story is deemed complete or before a PBI, product backlog item, is deemed complete. For example, it's a blanket statement across the board, such as all documentation must be done, all tests must be passed, it should be peer reviewed, and things such as that. I hope this helps you better understand the role of the product owner. Don't forget, go on down to scrumguides.org, read more from the awesome guide put together by Ken Schwaber and Jeff Sutherland, and don't forget to check out our friends, the Agile Alliance, at agilealliance.org. Thank you, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.